Hello, my friends. It's Sean Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and this is What's Up. We get together like this every couple of weeks, and we come to you from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, just down the road from Washington and Baltimore. And today we're coming live from the historic Star Theater on Washington Street, downtown in Berkeley Springs. And it's part of a day-long transition talk program that we're doing. And our friend and the extraordinary kind of contributor and help, Gregg Braden, is with us here today. And so what we're doing this morning is we're going to do a What's Up from with a studio audience of about 100 people. And so we're going to talk about whatever is on our mind. So what's on your mind? What's up, Gregg?
What's up? Well, John, thank you. First, I want to welcome everyone in the room with us. Everyone, I'm looking right, I think it's this camera. Welcome to our streaming audience. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's
Berkeley
fun.
Springs. I try to come once a year, and
we look forward to it.
Yeah,
it's
such a
wonderful
beautiful
time.
community. It's a beautiful town, but the community is what really makes it here.
Unlike any place I've ever lived in my life.
Well, this is completely unscripted because neither one of us. So as John mentioned earlier, he typically drives to Dulles Airport to pick me up, and we have engaged in a conversation on the way back. And we've done this enough years. He felt like, this would be something really cool to do live.
Yeah.
So we never know exactly what it's going to be.
We had an earlier conversation today, and the kind of question is, how do you act in midterm or the near term? How in the world do you, in the emergence of all of this technology, the insertion of these technologies, how do you, because you can't live without them. I mean, Lord knows you can't. Everybody's got to reach for their phone, whatever. How do you do that middle ground to where you are leaning toward this new world and this new human and these new capabilities and this larger level of consciousness, and yet not get consumed? I mean, I find myself just consumed by emails during the day, trying to figure out how you get through this from here to there and still take advantage of the technology that you need.
I don't think there's an answer. I think there are many possible solutions.
I
don't think there's any one answer, but I think there are many solutions. But for me, I keep coming back to this central idea that all of this, the momentum behind everything that's happening is based upon a way of thinking.
Right.
And that way of thinking is the way of thinking that has the greatest visibility in the world from a very few number of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give you a perfect example. United Nations, many of you know, 2015, through what was called it began with the Earth Summit and the Earth Charter, and then it evolved into something. Well, it actually began in 2000. There was something called the MDG, Millennial Development Goals. It was a 15-year vision by the UN of what they saw in the world, and nobody really paid much attention to it, didn't get much traction. 2015, the Earth Summit, and what was called now the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. And you hear the year 2030 coming up a lot in a lot of different circles, because 2030, there's a whole conversation we can have about what's driving it. But 2030 is what many of these organizations are saying, whatever we're going to do, we've got to have it done by 2030. So the UN has these 17 Sustainable Development Goals that they're hoping to implement by the year 2030. They haven't had the traction that they want. And so now they are resorting to new methods to get that traction. So if you've ever looked at these Sustainable Development Goals, on the outside they look beautiful. It's like a reduction in...
Like just reading the headlines, right?
Yeah, well, it's food security, for example, or reduction in poverty, or...
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and they sound beautiful. Then you look at the fine print of how you achieve. So for food security, for example, this is what's happening in Norway. Local farmers are being driven out of business, and governments are not helping them with the subsidies that they need. Of course, climate isn't helping, and so they need more help. those farms are being bought up by huge conglomerates and corporations that now are going to run them as corporate farms using GMO seeds and all kinds of chemicals and things. And that is a way to approach food security. So I was working with an organization who was pushing back on the way that they're implemented. The goals are good. It's just how you get there. It's the thinking. And that organization was, I guess the best word to use was infiltrated, hijacked by a few individuals who now have turned the purpose of the organization 180 degrees, where they're supporting all those goals. So I had to pull out. I couldn't support that, and they know why I pulled out. But here's where it gets interesting. So the UN had the ideas, and the digital currency is one of the ways to go about meeting some of these goals. They weren't getting much traction. In the year 2019, the organization you're all hearing about, the World Economic Forum, meeting in Davos every year, they signed an agreement proudly. I mean, it was a public thing, the signature, the handshake, and everything, with the United Nations, so that the ideas of the World Economic Forum are being implemented through the UN in those 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the ways to meet those goals is through a centralized digital currency that allows greater control of a population. So it hasn't happened yet, and a lot of this in America. America's set up differently than the rest of the world. And America cannot legally, they don't have to legally embrace this unless Congress approves it. Other countries can. They can be guidelines and they can be suggestions. So now the UN is hoping to have lobbyists lobby Congress, just the way they do with the pharmaceutical company or with the oil industries or any of that, to support these 17 sustainable goals. So this is where I think we do have an opportunity. Let our elected officials know that these are not good necessarily in our interest.
Yeah, and the understanding about these ideas and a lot of other ones are starting to flow through the alternative media in ways that it hasn't been in the past. And certainly things related to COVID and other such stuff are, suddenly people are starting to understand this wasn't really a good idea.
Well, the thing that's so, nobody asked us. It is the idea of a handful of people who strongly believe that the average person doesn't know or understand their world or their lives well enough to make good decisions. And so they're being made on our behalf. And some of the people honestly believe they're doing really good things. I mean, they really believe that this is where the world needs to go. So
the whole notion of people not asking us is opens the door to this whole idea about what a new government could. In my mind, there is a possibility now that hasn't existed before for a government that was largely based upon and reactive to the people. That is to say, think about this. Every government agency would have to justify their budget and what they're doing to the American people by way of the internet. So if they didn't get enough votes or however the thing worked, then their budget would be cut or something, and they would be forced to do good things and justify it and be able to say, this is what I'm going to use the money for, and this is what we're going to get, and then look at it from behind and say, how did you do last year? And it would be, if you did it, if it wasn't too granular, if it didn't get all down into the weeds, and it got high enough, I mean, who would vote for the Department of Defense the way it's going right now?
Well, I agree.
So thank you, my friends. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for being with us and for the conversation, being a part of this. And we'll be back. We'll be back again in 2 weeks and on another kind of unstructured conversation about the big change that we're all about. Come back and you can find more about it, about What's Up and Transition Talks and the Arlington Institute at arlingtoninstitute.org. So thank you very much, and thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.